Welcome back to Cyber Theo. Today, we're taking an in-depth journey into the world of Karl Marx, one of the most influential and controversial philosophers of modern times. Whether you're new to his ideas or already familiar, this tutorial will unpack the essential aspects of Marx's philosophy, offering insights into his theories on capitalism, class struggle, and historical materialism, among others. We'll break down complex ideas into digestible sections, helping you understand Marx's lasting impact on political thought, economics, and society as a whole. Let's jump right into it. Introduction to Karl Marx's life and context. Early life. Karl Marx was born in 1818 in Trier, in what is now Germany. Raised in a middle-class family, Marx studied law and philosophy at university, where he became increasingly involved in radical political movements. His early exposure to Enlightenment thinkers, especially Hegel, shaped his ideas about history, society, and change. Marx's career as a writer and journalist was deeply shaped by the political turbulence of 19th-century Europe, particularly the revolutions of 1848, when working-class movements across Europe fought against feudalism and for more democratic societies. Engels and Marx. Marx met Friedrich Engels, a fellow philosopher and critic of capitalism, in Paris in 1844. This was a pivotal moment in Marx's life, as Engels became his lifelong collaborator. Together, they co-authored some of Marx's most famous works, including the Communist Manifesto, 1848, which we'll discuss in detail later. The friendship with Engels not only helped shape Marx's philosophical outlook but also allowed him to continue his intellectual pursuits, as Engels financially supported Marx's work for much of his life. Historical and political context. To understand Marx's philosophy, it's important to place him in the context of industrializing Europe. The Industrial Revolution was transforming economies and societies. The rise of factories led to harsh working conditions, severe inequality, and the emergence of a working class that Marx would later call the proletariat. These changes set the stage for Marx's critique of capitalism. His experiences witnessing the exploitation and dehumanization of workers in burgeoning capitalist economies deeply influenced his ideas. Key concepts in Karl Marx's philosophy. Historical materialism. At the core of Marx's philosophy is the idea of historical materialism, which argues that material conditions, particularly the means of production, are the foundation upon which all other societal structures, legal, political, ideological, are built. According to Marx, human societies develop through stages, determined by the economic system in place at any given time. Marx's materialist conception of history stands in stark contrast to the idealism of philosophers like Hegel, who believed that ideas shape history. Marx argued that it's the economic base, the way goods and services are produced and distributed, that shapes the superstructure, laws, politics, religion, culture, and not the other way around. Therefore, historical change is driven by changes in economic conditions. Class struggle. A cornerstone of Marx's theory is the class struggle. Throughout history, Marx argues, societies have been divided into two main classes, those who control the means of production, the ruling class, and those who do the labor, the working class. In feudal society, these were the lords and peasants. In Marx's time, under capitalism, the division was between the bourgeoisie, capitalist class, and the proletariat, working class. Class struggle. A cornerstone of Marx's theory is the class struggle. Throughout history, Marx argues, societies have been divided into two main classes, those who control the means of production, the ruling class, and those who do the labor, the working class. In feudal society, these were the lords and peasants. In Marx's time, under capitalism, the division was between the bourgeoisie, capitalist class, and the proletariat, working class. Alienation. Marx's concept of alienation is central to his critique of capitalism. He believed that under capitalism, workers are alienated from four key things. From the product of their labor, workers do not own what they produce. Instead, the capitalist owns it, and the worker is disconnected from the outcome of their labor. From the process of labor, the work itself becomes monotonous, repetitive, and devoid of personal meaning or creativity. From themselves, workers become alienated from their own human potential because their labor is exploited for someone else's profit. From fellow workers, the capitalist system fosters competition between workers, further isolating individuals in their labor. This alienation contributes to the sense of disenfranchisement and dehumanization experienced by the working class. The labor theory of value. Marx's labor theory of value builds on the work of classical economists like Adam Smith and David Ricardo, but Marx extended their theories to make a more radical claim. According to Marx, the value of a commodity is determined by the amount of socially necessary labor time invested in producing it. The capitalist's profit, therefore, comes from paying the worker less than the value their labor adds to the commodity. The difference between the value created by labor and the wages paid to the worker is what Marx calls surplus value, and it's this surplus value that is the source of profit in a capitalist system. Marx saw this exploitation as the fundamental injustice of capitalism. Marx's critique of capitalism. Capitalism's inner contradictions. Marx believed that capitalism was inherently unstable because of its internal contradictions. As capitalists seek to maximize profits, they continually drive down wages and increase productivity, which eventually leads to overproduction, producing more goods than can be consumed. This results in economic crises like recessions and depressions, which Marx believed were inevitable in capitalist systems. Concentration of wealth and power. Marx argued that capitalism leads to the concentration of wealth and power in fewer and fewer hands, while the majority of people, the proletariat, become increasingly impoverished. This dynamic exacerbates inequality and fosters resentment and conflict between the classes. The inevitable revolution. Marx predicted that the inherent contradictions within capitalism would eventually lead to its collapse. The working class would become aware of its collective power and rise up in revolution, overthrowing the capitalist system. This would pave the way for a classless, stateless society, communism, where the means of production are owned collectively, and wealth is distributed according to need. Marx's legacy and modern relevance. Influence on global movements. Marx's ideas have inspired numerous social and political movements, particularly the rise of socialism and communism in the 20th century. From the Russian Revolution of 1917 to contemporary debates about economic inequality, Marx's critiques of capitalism continue to resonate. His work influenced leaders like Vladimir Lenin, Mao Zedong, and Fidel Castro, although the implementation of Marxist ideas has often deviated from his original vision. Marx's legacy and modern relevance. Influence on global movements. Marx's ideas have inspired numerous social and political movements, particularly the rise of socialism and communism in the 20th century. From the Russian Revolution of 1917 to contemporary debates about economic inequality, Marx's critiques of capitalism continue to resonate. His work influenced leaders like Vladimir Lenin, Mao Zedong, and Fidel Castro, although the implementation of Marxist ideas has often deviated from his original vision. Karl Marx's philosophy is more than just a critique of capitalism, it's a framework for understanding the dynamics of human societies throughout history. By focusing on material conditions and class relations, Marx sought to uncover the underlying forces that drive societal change. He challenged the prevailing notions of his time, suggesting that history is not a linear progression of ideas but is instead shaped by the material realities of economic production and the inevitable conflicts that arise from it. One of the most profound contributions of Marx's philosophy is his theory of historical materialism. Unlike philosophers before him who focused on the role of ideas, culture, or politics in shaping societies, Marx argued that the mode of production, how societies produce and distribute resources, determines the structure of society, including its laws, institutions, and ideologies. By examining how economic systems like feudalism and capitalism functioned, Marx identified patterns of class struggle as central to societal change. In this sense, he viewed history as the history of class conflict, where each epoch is defined by the domination of one class over another. For Marx, capitalism was the latest stage in this long historical process. While capitalism unleashed unprecedented technological advances and increased productivity, Marx was deeply critical of its inherent contradictions. He saw the bourgeoisie, the capitalist class, as the dominant force in this system, owning the means of production and reaping profits at the expense of the proletariat, the working class. In Marx's view, the exploitation of the proletariat, through the extraction of surplus value, was not an accident of capitalism but an inherent feature. This exploitation creates inequality and alienation, where workers are separated not only from the products of their labor but also from their own humanity. Alienation is another key concept that has lasting relevance in today's discussions about work and society. Marx's idea that workers under capitalism are alienated from their labor, turned into mere commodities, resonates with many contemporary critiques of the gig economy, factory labor, and the increasing automation of jobs. In a world where many workers feel disconnected from the purpose and outcome of their labor, Marx's insights into alienation still hold significant weight. He argued that this alienation would lead to widespread dissatisfaction and, eventually, revolution. This brings us to Marx's vision of the future. He believed that capitalism, like previous systems before it, would eventually collapse due to its own internal contradictions. As the working class becomes increasingly aware of its exploitation and its collective power, Marx predicted that the proletariat would rise up in revolution, overthrow the capitalist system, and establish a communist society. This society, in Marx's view, would be classless and stateless, where the means of production are owned collectively, and goods are distributed according to need rather than profit. It's important to note that Marx never fully articulated what this future society would look like. His focus was primarily on critiquing the current system rather than detailing a blueprint for a communist future. However, his ideas have inspired many revolutionary movements around the world, from the Russian Revolution to the Chinese Revolution, as well as various socialist movements in Latin America, Africa, and beyond. In many cases, these movements interpreted and applied Marx's ideas in different ways, sometimes leading to authoritarian regimes that claimed to act in the name of Marxism. This has led to much debate and criticism about how Marx's theories were implemented and whether they were used to justify political oppression. Critics of Marx have also pointed out that his predictions about the inevitable collapse of capitalism have not come to pass, at least not in the way he envisioned. Capitalism has proven remarkably adaptable, evolving through various crises and reforming itself to stave off the kinds of revolutions Marx anticipated. However, his critique of capitalism's tendencies toward inequality, exploitation, and economic crises remains relevant in today's world. As economic inequality continues to rise globally and concerns about wealth concentration and labor exploitation grow, many of Marx's insights continue to be discussed and debated by economists, sociologists, and political theorists. In recent years, scholars and activists have revisited Marx's ideas in light of contemporary issues like globalization, automation, and the rise of the gig economy. For example, many argue that modern-day capitalism, especially with the rise of multinational corporations, has further exacerbated the inequalities that Marx critiqued. The increasing concentration of wealth in the hands of a few billionaires, coupled with the precariousness of labor for many working-class people, reflect some of the fundamental dynamics that Marx identified over a century ago. Moreover, with automation and artificial intelligence threatening to displace large sections of the workforce, Marx's ideas about the dehumanizing effects of labor and the potential for worker alienation seem more relevant than ever. Some contemporary thinkers have even suggested that Marx's ideas about the eventual end of capitalism may still hold true, albeit in new and unexpected ways. Additionally, Marx's concept of class consciousness, the idea that the working class would eventually become aware of its collective power and rise against the ruling class, continues to be relevant in social movements today. From labor strikes to global protests against economic inequality, many modern movements still echo the class struggles Marx described. However, it's also crucial to recognize that Marxism, as a body of thought, is not without its complexities and contradictions. Marx's theories are sometimes criticized for being overly deterministic, reducing all societal dynamics to class struggle and economic factors. Others argue that Marx underestimated the ability of capitalist systems to reform and adapt, particularly through mechanisms like social safety nets, labor laws, and democratic institutions. Yet, despite these criticisms, Marx's influence remains undeniable. In conclusion, Karl Marx's philosophy provides a powerful lens through which to analyze the economic and social structures of the modern world. His critique of capitalism, his theory of historical materialism, and his focus on class struggle have left a profound and lasting impact on political and economic thought. While many aspects of his predictions may not have come to pass, the questions he raised about inequality, exploitation, and human emancipation are as pressing today as they were in the 19th century. Whether you view Marx as a visionary or a critic whose ideas failed in practice, his influence on modern thought is undeniable. The continuing relevance of his work is a testament to the depth and breadth of his insights into the human condition, labor, and the nature of economic systems. If this exploration into Karl Marx's ideas has sparked your interest, I encourage you to dive deeper into his original works like the Communist Manifesto and Das Kapital for a first-hand look at his revolutionary ideas. As always, don't forget to like, comment, and consider subscribing for more philosophy and tech content here on Cyber Theo. Thanks for joining me on this deep dive into Marx's philosophy. Check my links below for more resources and discussions.